The People's Business is made possible by our partners, Solar Dynamics, the most efficient energy systems.
A pleasant good night to you and welcome to another edition of The People's Business. I'm your host, Shane Seeley, and tonight we have another interesting topic for you. Elevating the relationship with Suriname through the Broco-Pondo Agreement. There were a number of high-level meetings and discussions here in Bridgetown, Barbados this week with our Surinamese counterparts. And of course, they will mean some big things to come for a number of people involved in the business sector here and beyond. To talk a bit about those discussions which would have happened over the last few days. There is still more to happen tomorrow right here in Bridgetown, Barbados. But we have with us tonight the Minister of State in the Ministry of Foreign Trade and Business Development, Sandra Husbands, and also His Excellency Albert Ramdin. He is the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Suriname. So stick around, we have a lot to talk about. We'll take a break and be right back. In Suriname. So stick around, we have a lot to talk about. We'll take a break and be right back. Thank you for staying with us here on The People's Business as we talk about the Broco-Pondo Agreement and a number of meetings that would have happened this week to discuss the way forward for the relationship between Barbados and Suriname. We have the Minister of State in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, also responsible for business development as well, Sandra Husbands, and the Surinamese Minister of Foreign Affairs, His Excellency Albert Ramdin. So let's get a bit of background first, because this Broco-Pondo Agreement, this time around, your teams were working on the refresher. When I say your teams, of course, Minister Husbands and Minister Ramdin, I mean the officials that were working with you. Let's talk about how this all started. Let's go back a few years. Minister Husbands, let's start with you, where this all began with our Barbados delegation heading down to Suriname to make a deal for economic and other cooperation going forward.
Well, good night to everyone, and thank you so much, Shane. The actual beginning of this really happened between leaders. Leadership is probably one of the most important things if we're going to build a Caribbean civilization, if we're going to build a Caribbean economy. And what happened between the then two leaders of Barbados and Suriname, Bouterse and Prime Minister Moore Motley, was the discussion around how can there be closer, more practical cooperation between the two countries that we can bring life and energy to the CSME. Both countries were persuaded that our destiny really lies in working with each other, and that we had to take strong steps to step over the obstacles to find ways to make this happen. So the first Broco-Pondo Agreement for Cooperation was established for 2018 to 2021. Now, as you know, COVID would have hit us around the end of 2019, and when we were into 2020, it was full-scale COVID. So it made it very difficult at the time to move ahead in a very aggressive way. But we did have an excellent start. The Prime Minister's office was able to appoint the then Senator Alfia Riggins to be the representative and to start the discussions there. We had members of the Ministry of Agriculture who would have gone down to Suriname to start looking at the possibilities for agricultural cooperation. And this gave us the beginning. What is happening now is that between the two foreign ministers, Mr. Ramdin and Senator Jerome Walcott, that there is a renewed vigor in pursuing this particular Brokopondo agreement and to be able to refresh it with a new one, giving it new life. And what we're seeking to do is to implement a number of new initiatives which will take Barbados and Suriname forward, joining our economies in terms of trade and investment, joining our peoples in relation to issues of culture. And so this is what we are working on as a country with Suriname.
And we want to get some of those details of that refreshed agreement, that new look agreement for 2022 and beyond, right here on the People's Business. Let's go over to Ambassador Ramdin, who is here in Barbados right now, spending some time with us. It's great to have you here in Bridgetown, Barbados. Talk about this trip back, first one possibly post-COVID, first business-to-business, face-to-face interaction that you may have had in recent months. Talk to us a bit about how that has been these past few days here on island.
Thank you very much, Shane. And let me begin by saying it's great to be back in Barbados for myself personally. But we are here with a delegation of government officials, high-level government officials. We had 3 ministers of government here with us, of agriculture, finance, and myself. And we were accompanied by a delegation of business representatives, 15 in total. And beyond that, by coincidence, we also have a Rotary group from Paramaribo visiting Barbados for other purposes, but many of those are also businessmen and businesswomen. So for us, this is a great opportunity, indeed, face to face. But I must start by saying, and I recognize the introduction Minister Husbands made, because that's the context in which we are operating, fully support that. What I want to say is that this relationship, the elevation of it, goes to the highest political level in both countries. This is not an agreement between two countries and managed by cabinet ministers. This is something which will be managed by the two leaders, the Honorable Prime Minister of your country, Mia Amor Motley, and the President of Suriname, Chandrika Prasad Santokhi. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because if we want action, we need the commitment, not only the commitment, but the drive of two leaders to make this happen. And what we have seen over the past couple of months when we had meetings in different places is that there is a real good alignment in thinking, in vision, but also the action needed for this to happen. And today we are going back. Tomorrow we'll be going back to Suriname with clear indication how we're going to put this all together so that the actions will take place. And I believe we had a great visit, good discussions. We will follow up with lots of other agreements, but in the end, it will be the private sector which will have to drive this process intensively. The governments will facilitate that process wherever possible, taking down barriers, promoting some new areas of collaboration, aviation, connectivity, sea and air routes, but also exchanging experiences. We have some experience, technical capabilities, which we want to share with Barbados. Barbados has technical capabilities which we can benefit from. So all in all, I believe this is going to be a mutually beneficial relationship, a win-win for both countries, and fully in compliant with the thinking behind the integration of the Caribbean community, because the ultimate idea and intent is always be to have a single economic space. This will facilitate that process. And I'm happy that two leaders and some others are out there who are willing to join this. I would almost want to call it a movement towards real integration, because we have spoken for far too long about these things and not acted upon it.
So we are expecting to see more action in the weeks and months ahead. I want to bring back in Minister Husbands here because for Barbados, this is a big deal. I've heard, well, then Senator, but now just she's the special envoy, the Prime Minister's special envoy to Suriname and to Guyana, speaking about how important and how much of a big deal this is for Barbados. Explain that to us. Why is this such a big deal for us here on the island?
One of the things that we need to help Barbadians to understand is that trying to build an economy and trying to build opportunity and a future for your young people is going to require more than 300,000 people. 300,000 people cannot raise sufficient in savings. They cannot generate sufficient in terms of demand for goods so that you're able to build enterprises that keep growing and growing and growing, and therefore creating more opportunity for careers for our young people, more opportunities for ownership. So Barbados has to operate in a space that is bigger than its 166 square miles. And where else are we going to do that? But with our brothers and sisters across the region with whom we have a number of things in common, including our history, but also our very needs. Therefore, the relationship with Suriname, as it will be with all other territories within CARICOM, is important. Suriname has land. Suriname has minerals. Suriname has fisheries. Suriname also has a relatively small population in relation to its size, but it is certainly much bigger than Barbados. So if we can export our services, if we can export our products, then we are going to have a bigger market in which to play. But suppose you have, for example, in your population, people who long to do commercial farming. We don't have enough space for everyone to do that. But if we can have a relationship with Suriname, where we can have an agreement on the use of land, etc., that we can set up commercial scale farming, then you're going to enable those people with that passion to do so. Now, one of the things Suriname has asked is that whatever it is we do, let's have some local content. Let us do things as joint initiatives between the Surinamese and the Barbadians. And that way, both sets of population get the opportunity to benefit from the bounty that is available in both countries. Now, you know, for example, that we wanted to do black belly sheep, but we don't have enough land to do 1 million black belly sheep. But that industry is going to be critical for Barbados for meat, for leather, and leather products. Our black belly sheep is a unique animal. If we are able to take it to commercial sizes by being able to use Suriname, being able to use Guyana, we're going to be able to build out a very, very strong industry. And just that is just one of the things. Many other things we're going to be collaborating on. I'll share some of them with you, along with political collaboration, because that's going to be important in this world. We have to be clear about what we believe in, principles we stand on, and therefore, when confronted with situations politically across the world, we have to be able to discuss and arrive at a place where there is a common ground in CARICOM. Secondly, you have to have, for example, trade and investment. We want to be able to create the framework that will allow for more trade and that will facilitate investment. One of the things that we discussed at our meeting was that it is our responsibility as the governments to create an enabling environment by making the ease of doing business, work on that to make sure it is easier for both sides to trade. And where difficulties are encountered, let us establish a rapid response mechanism that will remove the difficulties, deal with the obstacles, to give the fullest confidence to each side that we can trade,
Right.
we can invest, because things will be dealt with. So these are some of the things that we've discussed, and we are certainly looking forward now to doing the hard work of putting those things in place to enable our private enterprises to be able to engage.
Yes, it's about getting that business sector rolling because once that happens, that's where the real economic activity starts to happen
Indeed.
for any country involved, in this case, both Barbados and Suriname. So we'll take a pause here, but when we come back, we'll get to hear from Ambassador Ramdin what he thinks about the benefits for Suriname on their side and a bit more about the collaborative effort, some of the new initiatives that you both would have signed off on under this Broco Pondo agreement. So we'll take a break. And for those viewers, you can call us as well if you have your questions, 228-5562, 228-5563, or the numbers. You can ask the ambassador or our Minister Husbands about this Broco Pondo agreement and what's in it for you. We'll take a break and be right back. We want to welcome back you viewers to this edition of the People's Business, where we are focusing on elevating the relationship with Suriname through the Broco Pondo agreement. And our journeys to Paramaribo, well, there have been many so far for the Special Envoy, Althea Wiggins. She has done some journeys there trying to drum up more business, more interaction, more interest among the business sector there in Paramaribo as well. But let's talk about on the Surinamese side, Ambassador Ramdin. We want to hear what's in it for Suriname. Where do you think that the economic fortunes for Suriname can grow through this partnership with Barbados?
Thank you very much. I'll give you two examples. One is what Minister Husbands already mentioned, agriculture. We have sufficient land. We can, together with Guyana and some other territories in the region, become the food basket for the whole region and even beyond. And I think we can create win-win situations there. We can produce foodstuffs, vegetables, and fruits for the markets in the region. So this is one thing we want to develop, improve our export of vegetables and fruits to Barbados in different forms. And for that, we need to create the transport logistics by air and by sea. We will be working on that as well. That will create jobs in Suriname for the people, the farmers. It will create export and with that foreign currency income. But what we also want to do in the whole agricultural situation, that's why I'm always speaking about a win-win, a mutually beneficial relationship, is we want to partner with Barbadian farmers together with Sudanese farmers to create that critical mass for exports. That can happen in the whole agricultural area, in fisheries, in meat production, and the same goes for water. Food and water security is important for the future. We can export. We have abundance in sweet water, and we can process that into potable water and export it to the region. And this is one of the things we will be undertaking also in the relationship with Barbados. The other area is tourism. Barbados is receiving at least 3 or 4 times more persons as tourists than its own population. We don't have that. We do have a tourism experience which we can offer, but then it would be a very useful solution if we could package that what Barbados can offer, sun, sand, and beach, and history, cultural tourism, together with our nature, our rapids, our rivers, and flora and fauna. If we can package that tourism product in one, with a couple of days in Barbados, a couple of days in Suriname, back to Barbados, then both countries will benefit from that economic activity. That is how we can develop our economy. As was mentioned earlier, we also have a small population, 600,000 persons. With that alone, we won't be able to build a sustainable economy going forward. And I see scope for collaboration in terms of energy, especially renewable energy. We can benefit from. There is also scope for working in other areas of health, education, and all these will bring economic activities. The creative industries, for instance, in um, gold products that can be offered to your tourists here in Barbados. All that will create economic opportunities, income, jobs, and ultimately it will be the foundation of a strong economy. So here you see that we can work together and benefit from all these economic activities in the different sectors together and moving forward. There is one other sector, and I want to highlight this because this is an opportunity going forward. Suriname has good perspective with regard to oil and gas. Oil and gas in itself is an highly technological, capital intensive activity. For that, the international oil companies have their own capacity. But there is a lot of subcontracting taking place in terms of other services which the oil companies don't bring themselves. They need to buy that in, hire that, and so on. We believe that Barbados can become the local content of Suriname in that context. And local content for President Santoki is not only within the national borders of Suriname, it's within the whole Caribbean. Because these prospects of an oil and gas need to benefit not only the future generations of Suriname, but also the whole Caribbean. So we are inviting um, Bajan companies to register in Suriname as well, and with that also partner with Surinamese companies and become local content. Then they can benefit from this oil and gas industry, which is certainly to come and will generate enormous amounts of income and investments. So there are several areas in which the private sector can engage, and I'm happy to see that the Surinamese private sector organization are already working with the private sector organization of Barbados to basically um, take this to the next level of engagement and do business. And I hope that in the end, we both will understand that this is an example for the whole region and others can join in this process as well.
The private sector has been a big part of this initiatives, and I understand that there were some special meetings set up for private sector to private sector collaboration between Suriname and Barbados. Minister Husbands, how is the private sector and entrepreneurs and business people here feeling about this relationship, feeling about getting into this Surinamese market? What kind of feedback can you give us?
People are ready and eager to explore what some of the opportunities are. What they want to be able to be sure of is how can we get sufficient information to know who the players are? How can we make links with them that we can start those dialogues and discussions? This is why having a trade mission go down to Suriname is going to be important. That is why it is important for us to use technology to be able to allow people to start talking and relating to each other. One of the things that Minister Ramdin and I work on in COTED, which is an organ of CARICOM, is the issue of the SimSu Pro, which is a digital portal that will allow all of the producers of raw materials or manufactured goods to register those on the portal so that everybody across the region who wants to buy a product can go on it and see what is being produced in the region. Because without that type of information, without that type of access, what happens if you can't find it domestically? You go to the United States, you go to England, you go to somewhere else without first making that stop in the region to see if it's being produced in the region so that we can help build our economies by buying from each other. So one of the questions the private sector asks, we need to make sure we have information that we know who all the players are and how we can get in touch with them so that we can start that engagement. And I saw that as a very positive sign that Barbadian companies are ready to reach out and they're ready to engage.
Ready to engage. What are some of the first products that you can see really making a big splash over in Suriname?
Well, Barbados, for example, we've got, for example, I know we're not supposed to call names, but let's say you've got biscuits. Let's say you've got biscuits that you can export and sell. Let us look at, we've got things like ice cream, we have things like oil, we have things like, well, on the animal feed side, it is running the other way because what we want are the inputs from them to be able to make a reasonably priced animal feed that we can help to bring the cost of animal production down so that it reaches the dinner table in Barbados at a very, very reasonable price. But one of the things that I think would be extremely useful would be the area of services. Barbados, for example, has a strength within its services sector. So as the Surinamese economy grows, Barbados has a lot of surplus expertise that can be deployed to be able to assist Suriname in its growth. Because at the end of the day, as will happen with Guyana, an explosion in oil is going to start bringing money very quickly into the economy. But you then have to grow out all of your platforms to be able to cope with it and convert it into real benefit for your people. And this is where you're going to need the services, the professional services of people. And this is something that Barbados does very well. So, for example, if you're opening up new lands, you're going to need your surveyors, you're going to need your engineers, you're going to need architects. And it's not that they don't have them, it is that if the demand is great, you may not have enough to sufficiently respond to the demand. And what you want is that the demand doesn't flow to somebody outside of the region. Let us utilize the services that are available here in Barbados to be able to make something like that happen. Now, one of the things we do well too is rum. And rum would be one of the products that we would be eager because at the end of the day, you can have many different types of rum, but you know, Barbados is the home of rum. It started here, right? And we want to be able to offer our top quality rum into their markets. And I believe that this is something that will work very, very well. Now, we are building a life sciences center where we're looking at the things that we produce, and at Export Barbados, Mark Hill is actively working with people to look at producing a number of products. And we would want to be able to offer those as part of the mix to the Surinamese consumer. We believe that there will be a place for those. So a number of things are going to be available to trade and export, and for us to import from them as well to help us. One of the things Minister Ramdin had mentioned was the fact that the number of tourists that we have, just imagine if we can begin to supply all the hotels and restaurants in this region with food and produce from this region. That would create a tremendous boost because they consume a great deal every year. But what is it they're consuming? A lot of subsidized fruits and vegetables brought in from extra regional sources. So we're not benefiting from that tourism coming here in the region. And that is something that we want to change, and we can only do it if we have our SPS legislation in place, which is our sanitary and phytosanitary legislation, if we have the inspections and the labs to ensure that we're operating to the best level of quality so that we can assure people that it meets the proper health standard, and if we can then build to scale, then we should be able to produce for them at a reasonable price an item that meets their quality. They want their tomatoes a certain size, we should be able to do that. They want to do something new with fresh young okra. They have a lovely dish that they want to produce. We should be able to give them that fresh, tender okra that they can convert into a dish that can appeal to the palates of our guests. So there is a lot. And even one of the things I want to see, and it would be for further discussion, is the area of the poultry. Barbados has expertise in poultry production, but because of scale, our poultry is very expensive. Scale is small, cost of feed is small. If we can have that collaboration with Suriname on the production of the feed, on producing the baby chicks, doing the production of the baby chicks, etc., then we are going to be able to build out a poultry industry that can serve the region and serve beyond. So there are a number of things that we can do. It's just a matter of identifying what makes sense.
Food security is something that I know that you and your team has been working at the CARICOM level and during this week with the Broco Pondo agreement. We want to come back and talk about the signing of it. So, I mean, we need to know if it has been signed, sealed, and delivered, or what else has to happen before we get to that stage. But we still have a lot to talk about right here on The People's Business. Those numbers to call with your questions for you viewers, 228-5562, 228-5563. We'll be back in a moment. I'm having the opportunity tonight on the People's Business to speak to His Excellency Albert Ramdin, the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Suriname and the Minister in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade here in Barbados, also in connection with business development, Sandra Husbands, about the Broco-Pondo Agreement. Has it been signed? Is everything settled now, or are there other things that have to happen before this new, refreshed agreement is signed? Minister.
I turn that
Shall I?
to
Yeah,
Minister
okay, good.
Ramdin.
Yes, no, we are on the same page, so it's easy. Um, the idea of the elevation is that we will produce a new document which will be updated in many ways, and we will add to it new areas of collaboration. But also the structure of the agreement will change in that sense that it will be signed at the highest level. We, from our side, we call it a strategic dialogue and cooperation platform, under which there will be several working groups dealing with the different sectors so that we can direct that process much more with short lines between those who are involved in this process. Like the agriculture minister will uh, work with his counterpart in the respective country and develop a program for agricultural progress. The intent is to have this document ready for signature early July when President Santoki will host the conference of heads of governments in Suriname. And on the margins, in the margins of that meeting, we intend to have both leaders of government sign this new agreement that is expanded, but also focused on results and action. So while we all agree on the way forward and we will start working along those lines, I don't want to say we're going to wait until this agreement is signed, but missions will start taking place. We expect the Minister of Agriculture of Barbados with a delegation to visit Suriname soon to be able to see land, to talk to local farmers, because the idea is to build that partnership so that we learn from each other, people to people, business to business. And we also expect a trade mission, hopefully in May, so that we can make those connections in those areas where we spoke about, whether it's water, food, fruits, vegetables, packed or unpacked, labeling, packaging, all these things, the businesses need to work with each other now. So I hope this trade mission can can come to Suriname as soon as possible. We welcome that. It's also an opportunity to see what is happening in the country in terms of local content. And I want to make one point which is strategically important. We are developing our region now. We have seen what is happening in the world, and we have seen also what COVID-19 has brought us and the challenges with which that came. So we have to make sure that as best as possible, as much as possible, we have the internal capacity as a region, as a Caribbean community, to service our people, to take care of our people, whether that's food, whether that's medicine, whether that's safety, whether that's water, education, health. We need to make sure that as much as possible we can be independent from the world when a crisis hits. And I think this is the underlying objective of this movement towards closer collaboration between countries that are ready to go. Suriname and Barbados are ready to go. We know that Guyana is also ready to go. These three countries can create their own space, economic space, social space, to work together to create a complementary economy whereby everybody wins in this process and creates wealth and generates jobs and creates a future for their people. That is something which is the message which we want to convey through these initiatives. In the end, the government will facilitate, the private sector will act, and the people will benefit.
You're building these bridges, these economic and social and cultural bridges between Bridgetown and Paramaribo. That includes tourism, trade, and ease of doing business. All of these things happen a whole lot easier when there's a direct flight. How long before that happens? Minister
Yeah,
Husbands,
of course.
who takes this one?
Well, I was
Well,
hearing today about the horrors of the journey that the Surinamese have to get up very early, one something in the morning, catch a flight,
Wow.
spend 8 hours in Trinidad before they can make it here. So one of the things
Sounds like a
here,
flight to
so
the
it was
UK.
oh, indeed. You could imagine how
Wow.
exhausting that is, and it could be discouraging to people to come and you know have holidays and so on when it's so difficult. But one of the things that will happen is that they have the Fly Always that is there. You have Caribbean Airlines, and I think that once you start getting more demand in the region, more reasonable schedules will start to emerge. And we saw this happen with Guyana, where Guyana now is getting a lot more flights than it is accustomed getting, and more direct flights as well. And so, as energy begins to build up, you'll find that it makes it more feasible now to have proper scheduled flights that are convenient for people. And what we need is something that adequately serves the Southern Caribbean, incorporating Guyana and Suriname with Trinidad, Barbados, Guyana, Barbados, Grenada, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, that will serve that area. And this is something that we have to work on. And secondly, the issue also of the ease of movement of the cargo, because if you can't move the cargo, the trade just cannot happen. And though there is a shipping line that does come and they are able to do it in a couple of days. What we want is to put more goods on. And when goods come to Barbados, we need to be producing something here that we can load back onto that boat so that it goes back down to Suriname flow. So it is getting the energy there that will help the transport to be more convenient, more frequent, and eventually more affordable.
Just paint a picture for Barbadians about the Surinamese products that are on our shelves already. What are some of the things that we consume here that are coming directly from Suriname?
Well, Suriname has they've got fish that they are able to export, and I believe some is already coming into Barbados, and that is important. One of the other things that Special Envoy had worked on was things like duck meat, which is very very popular in hotels and at Christmas time here in Barbados. They have other agricultural products which come into Barbados, which we need to be able to make greater use of. What we're hoping we'll be able to benefit more from is the gold. As you would know, with Guyana, we had a dialogue about having a gold exchange here in Barbados, which would allow products made in Guyana or made here by Barbadian jewelers will be available for sale because we've got all of these ships home porting here, ships coming through, a larger tourist arrival than they get. And we want to extend the same to Suriname to be able to use their gold to be able to provide people who are moving through the region with access to it, the South American products. And so this is something that we are definitely looking forward to, that we can help move more of the Surinamese gold and the Surinamese agricultural products in Barbados.
Your Excellency, Minister Ramdin, what are some of the products that you're now looking under the new initiative, the refreshed initiative to export into Barbados? I know something that Suriname does well is rice. You have a vibrant rice industry there. What are some of the other products that we can see coming here in short order?
well, already mentioned by the minister, a couple of them. Certainly rice. I must say it depends on the preference of the market, of course. Some discussions took place about that yesterday when the private sector met. I do believe there is scope for water supplies as well as in the area of agriculture, meat. At this point, um, there is already one exporter who is bringing in pork meat. But I think once we have the black belly sheep also introduced in Suriname and commercially produced, we'll see a business developing there whereby we in Suriname could produce the, the, the meat and it could be shipped in large quantities to Barbados for repackaging, the special cuts, and then market it not only in Barbados and in the Caribbean, but worldwide. So that could be an income for long term. I see great benefit in terms of fruits, especially um, freshly squeezed fruits for the hotel industry. An area where Suriname can benefit from certainly Barbados' experience and expertise is in the hotel industry, in the hospitality industry. We are not a large tourist destination um, because, as I said, we have an interior which is still pristine and offers a lot of cultural and environmental experiences, but we have to develop our tourist industry as well. So I believe the experience which Barbados has in that sense can be utilized. So there is enormous scope in a more at the product level to work together. Limestone, for instance, which we import from Barbados, is used in our agricultural sector and also in some other sectors in terms of water treatment and so on. But we can export sand and other kinds of minerals to Barbados. Gold has been mentioned. We're certainly going to follow on that because Suriname has a gold refinery and we are able to produce gold in different forms, quantities, and jewelry to be sold here. So again, there is enormous scope to work. There's already exports taking place. There's several companies already present there from Suriname. Um, and what I noted yesterday, and that was something very encouraging, is that some companies are really willing to partner with Surinamese companies and establish business in Paramaribo or in Suriname. And that is very encouraging because that's the only way to go. I encourage the private sector not to wait until everything is perfect and 100% arranged, because by that time you have so many competitors. It's better to come in now, invest, work with the local entrepreneurs, and create a business. And it will be a profitable business because the future of the country, with lots of capital coming in, but lots of investments, will create more jobs, more economic activity in real estate, for instance, or even in hotel industry, the building of new hotels. Um, there is great scope for collaboration there because you have the expertise and the experience and the long-standing uh, I almost want to say a culture of a tourism industry. We still developing that. So there is scope. We have the product, but it has to be packaged as well. So I think those things will happen in the on the short term, um, certainly because it's going to be driven by visionary leaders who see the benefit, but also understand that is the only way to go.
And we want both of you, Minister Ramdin and Minister Husbands, to take us into that vision after the break. We'll just get your final thoughts on, in terms of what levels of employment we can expect to see and economic fortune for both countries, the economic growth that we can expect to see in the coming years, right here on The People's Business. It's time to put a nice little bow on this gift that we have in terms of the Broco-Pondo Agreement and what it means for the economic fortunes of both Barbados and Suriname. Of course, giving us all of the insight tonight, we had Minister Ramdin and Minister Husbands. Minister Ramdin, I want you to continue on the expectations before we get back to you, Minister Husbands, because I know you'll brief us on the possibility of those job opportunities and as well what we can see in terms of the economic bump coming out of this collaborative effort. But Minister Ramdin, first let's go to you. You still have some work to be done here on the ground in Bridgetown. Talk to us about what happens over the next 24 to 48 hours before you head back to Paramaribo, and then what we can expect to see in the weeks ahead.
Well, first of all, the private sector delegation is still here, and my understanding is that up till this morning they had meetings with several of their counterparts, and that bodes well. That is very good that even on a Sunday morning they see the benefit of reaching out and meeting. So we are very happy to see that. They're very motivated and interested in building partnerships with Bajan companies. Tomorrow we will have the last meeting with the Honorable Prime Minister for a final visit, and certainly we will share with the Prime Minister the results of this visit, but also the plans for the future. And those plans are on short term, so within the coming 3 months, a lot of action will take place and need to take place. And I can tell you from my own experience that both of them, I have been in meetings with both the President Santoki and the Honorable Prime Minister, and I know what they expect. They don't expect talk. They expect concrete results. They want to see that agreements were reached, not only agreements in words, but an action plan attached to it, follow up, and this is what we have to deliver. And that is what we're going to deliver as well. And I hope tomorrow to be able to share with the Honorable Prime Minister some of the concrete things which we have agreed on in the past couple of days. So tomorrow is not the end of this mission. It is, in fact, the beginning of an execution of a project for the coming months, and then build on that towards the future. There is so much between our two countries. And yes, regretfully, the logistics, the transport logistics are not making it possible. But we do not want only tourists to come to Suriname.
Indeed.
So by that I mean not only the tourists which are coming to Barbados. I would like to see Barbadians come to Suriname as well, and the Surinamese come to Barbados. I showed some of the pictures to my friends, and they all love to see that. So we need to promote relations between the two peoples, and that will be the start of a beginning of a cultural, social, but also a political relationship, because we share, on top of everything else, we share the same values of democracy, strong institutions, good governance, and a strong independent judiciary. All those things are important. When you have these elements together, the only thing that can come out of that strategically is success. But you need to build that success. You need to work on success. And that is what we want to do. And I'm convinced that will happen within a couple of months, and we'll be able to demonstrate, I would hope, within a year, a tripling of the export and the trade between the two countries.
Amazing. Those projections are, and the numbers, that's what we want to hear. Minister Husbands, very quickly, what are your projections? Because I'm pretty sure that in the ministry you would have worked out some initial numbers, initial estimates. What are you thinking?
Well, initially, Barbados is looking at seeking to double its exports. And this is important for us if the economy is going to grow. So how are we going to get there? By stimulating economic activity through the connection with Suriname. So if you go back to the gold exchange, we've been losing our jewelers, people who craft things in gold. This will revive that industry and have more people participating. If we're taking wood from Suriname, taking wood from Guyana, you're going to get your furniture makers now coming with maybe new lines, new designs, etc., that you can then begin to fill the thousands of houses that we're going to be building here in Barbados. In terms of tourism, with the tourism services, tourism planning is going to be important for Suriname. So
Right.
they avoid some of the errors that we made in building out our product when we just let it grow, we allowed it to grow organically and then found that all of the seaside was taken up and Barbadians couldn't get anywhere to bathe. So what we want to do is to be able to take that knowledge and help them build out, for example, their tourism in a way that is beneficial both to the Surinamese and providing the guests with what it is they need. And then what else do you need? You need hotel management experience. And Barbados has an abundance of people who have worked at hotels. There's not enough space for them to have upward mobility here because some of the people are still young who are above them, and they need to seek other places in which to advance their hotel career. And all through the region, you can travel and find many Barbadians in top positions in the hotels around the region. And Suriname will become another place in which that built up expertise can flow so that people are earning and at the same time empowering Suriname to be able to grow. And let me say, they were able to add 581 million US dollars to their exports between 2015 and 2020, was it, Minister Ramdin? Going up to
Yes.
3 point something billion US in exports. We want to understand how they did that, take some lessons from that, and see how we can make some of that happen for us, not
Well,
just in trade with Suriname, but working together to trade with other countries. That's what we want to do.
Well, we'll watch it all unfold, and of course, we know that you will keep us informed on both sides of the border, both Suriname and Barbados, as we continue to build these bridges and elevate the relationship. I want to thank you both for coming and sharing with us tonight, right here on the People's Business. And for you viewers, thank you for watching another edition of the show right here with us. I'm Shane Seeley. Good night. Thank you, Minister Husbands. Great show.
Okay, thank you.